Ito ang ayaw mangyari ng China ngayon, ang mapahiya sa Pilipinas kaya di makalapit ang China ngayon. Ayon sa nakalap nating impormasyon, pinakain ng alikabok ang China nang kausapin si Romeo Browner, ang bagong talagang AFP chief ni PBBM sa Pilipinas. Ayon kay Browner, nakakagulat na biglang gustong makipagtulungan sa atin ni Ambassador Wang Silian dahil inaalok tayo ng military drills at makipagsanib kay Wang Silian matapos mapag-alamang ipagtatanggol ang BRP Sierra Madre ng UN General para pigilan ang pangahatak na mangyayari na pinaplano ni Wang Silian. Kaya gustong apulahin ni Bato ang mga away na nangyayari sa kanilang kapulungan kaugnay sa resolusyon ni Ontiveros na hihingi ng tulong sa UN General. Ayon kay Senator Risa, hindi mapipigilan ni Cayetano ang paglapit natin sa UNGA dahil kailangan na magparating ng tulong para di mahatak ang BRP Sierra.
Silang dalawa po, I agree, both of them. Huwag lang kayo magtampo sa akin, basta kayong dalawa, nakikinig ako sa inyo. I admire your efforts.
Katapos po ng ICJ sa GA po dito.
Let me finish, Mr. President.
Just I'm correcting the fact.
Yes, and I'm also correcting also your facts. So,
Wag na po natin intayin yung ganyang sitwasyon. Kung gawin nila, kung hindi nila gawin, na ayaw nating intayin ang isang bagyo na i-rescue kuno ng China na nagbubuli sa atin sa West Philippine Sea ang ating sariling mga magigiting na Marines bilang cover para hatakin nila ang BRP Sierra Madre. So,
we should not be anti-US nor anti-China. We should be pro-Philippines. Because iba ang interest ng US sa interest ng Pilipinas, sa interest ng China. Freedom of navigation, pareho tayo sa US. Pero dito sa ating territory and sovereign rights, wala po so far guarantee ang US. Hindi po sinasabi ng US, sige go ahead, get the minerals, get the oil. Sagot ko kayo. Wala pong ganon. Kaya nga ang suggestion ni Justice Carpio, makipag-gitgitan tayo at pagka binomba yung ating isang barko, may war na. Ang pinakamasama kasi is yung mga nakikinig sa atin sa kabilang side, alam yung strategy natin. Superpowers have different rules. You know,
that's why we need a rules-based solution to the West Philippines.
yes, and that's why we need it. But in the meantime, if magkagera yung superpowers at ubos na lahat ng Pilipino, wala na yung sinasabi nating rule-based. Rule-based pero burado lahat ng Pilipino.
Me and Senator Bato will invite you to Mindanao. You can all move there to Mindanao with us.
Once sinabi ni President Bongbong, hindi, dalhin natin sa UN, eto tayo, multilateral, then we're free to agree or disagree and ano. Pero yung uunahan natin siya na hindi pa niya alam. Of course, that's our privilege.
Lahat naman tayo dito ay nagkakaisa, no? Na tayo galit na galit sa pambubuli ng China sa ating mga fisherman at sa ating mga kasundaluhan, mga Navy natin, Coast Guard, yung kailang ginagawa. Lahat tayo galit. Pero I'll just give you a scenario, Mr. President. You can just imagine the level of frustration, the level of outrage that we will experience kung magkatotoo yung nabasa ko sa news na sinabi nila that China is planning to tow away the BRP Sierra Madre away from the Ayungin Shoal.
Oh.
If that will happen, Mr. President, sobra na talaga, para na tayong mga ano to, I can imagine, para na tayong mga ipis na inapak-apakan na ng mga tao na ito kapag yan na igagawin pa nila. Awang-awa na nga tayo sa mga Marines natin na walang natitirahan doon, walang shelter, kundi yung naka-ditch lang doon, na grounded na BRP Sierra Madre na puno ng kalawang. Kung makita mo yung mga Marines natin doon, maiiyak ka sa sitwasyon nila. At may plano pa ang China na hihilain daw yun, tatanggalin, paalisin doon. So, sobra na yan, Mr. President. Iniisip ko talaga, as a Filipino, hindi ko ma-imagine kung gawin pa nila yan. Wala na nga ibang matirahan yung sundalo natin doon, mga marino natin, hihilain pa nila palayo. At anong gagawin nila doon? Pakilo nila? Pakilo nila yung barko natin,
Ang balita po, Senator De La Rosa, is sinurround na po nila yung Ayungin shows. They're surrounded now. Pag makita mo sa ating, as a matter of fact, nagbigay po tayo ng aeroplano sa BIFAR, na caravan, Cessna caravan, at nagpipicture taking na po sila doon sa area niyan. The Ayungin shows is now surrounded by militia ships. Okay. Ang sabi daw nila, isang bagyo na lang yan. Pag may tumamang bagyo, sila daw magre-rescue sa ating mga Marines kasi wala makalapit. At pag-rescue daw nila ng Marines, kanila na yun. Yan ang balitang plano. So ang akin dyan, kung mangyayari talaga yan, sa tingin ko, I don't know.
Okay, yan po ang picture ng Swallow Reef. It is militarized. Dekada na po yan. Pinakita na rin po yan ng mga think tank sa US. Hindi po chismis or hindi po bali-balita lang na bago ngayon na ang mga features ng Malaysia at Vietnam ay militarized. Kausapin niyo po Navy at saka ang ating pong Coast Guard. Lumapit po kayo dyan, kinausap ko po sila as Secretary of Foreign Affairs. Sasabihan din po sila, you are in Vietnamese waters, you are in Malaysian waters. Di ba? So, the truth is, the US think tanks ignored putting that front and center because iba po ang interest ng US sa atin. Sa atin po ang interest natin, sovereignty, territory, and sovereign rights. Ang US po, ang kanilang interest po ay yung freedom of navigation. Ang US po ay hindi nakapirma sa UNCLOS. Ang US po hindi officially tinatanaw yung pong arbitral award natin because hindi sila signatory sa UNCLOS. I've spoken to people in the White House, I've spoken to senators and members of Congress. Bakit po ang US Joint Patrol hindi nila ino-offer near Vietnam and Malaysia? So the point is, the good senator was saying freedom of navigation sa lahat. Ang number one na may interest sa freedom of navigation, mabubulat man tayo, is China. Bakit po? Because 80% ng ekonomiya ng China ay nasa coastal areas niya and mostly malapit sa atin yung southern, di ba? So actually, yung sinasabi ng US na freedom of navigation, yun din ang gusto ng China. Ang unang magsasuffer kung may gera around the South China Sea is China. Ang pangalawang magsasuffer tayo kasi maiipit tayo sa gitna eh. Ang Malaysia at Vietnam ay meron pong strategy na nakikipag-away sila sa China sa territory nila pero hindi po sila gumigitna sa dalawang superpower na US at saka China.
Naman natin siguro dyan na Senator Cayetano is magandang makipag-usap kung yung kausap mo ay matino. Sa totoo lang. Ang problema, kausap ni President Marcos, first state visit niya ay China. Nakausap niya po si President Xi, and during that meeting, they were very cordial, very friendly, and nagsabi po nila they will continue to engage on freedom of navigation or movement within the West Philippine Sea. Wala pang ilang linggo na dumaan, ayun na po yung pag-take over na po ng green lighting or mga
Green lace.
harassment ng ating mga white ships po ito, Coast Guard and our fisher folk. As a matter of fact, since then, the President has called the ambassador several times to Malacanang. If you ask me, I would have been more harsh, actually. So, mahirap ang kumausap sa isang bansa na hindi man naman matino. You started with your speech by saying that it was a phrase from the Bible. Fortunately, our friends in China do not believe in God, and nor do we believe in the Bible. Because I remember talking to one and I said, "Are you Buddhist?" Sabi niya, "No, I'm communist." So, wala silang pinapaniwala na Diyos. So tayo, naniniwala po tayo sa Diyos, takot po tayo kay Allah and to God. Mahirap po usapin yung isang bansa na hindi po takot sa kay Allah o kay God kasi wala po lang
Mr. President.
pinapaniwala.
Mr. President,
I will just end by saying, I'll just end this statement by saying is, if there were goodwill measures being done by that particular country to our discussions and negotiations, di wala po sana tayong problema. Unfortunately, even in our embassy here, nangyari na sa akin yan. Ako hindi naman nabudol, pero I was thrown under the bus when he told me something about Pogo and I shared it to everybody. Ang sabi niya, kasinungalingan, ay pala, totoo pala ang sinabi niya, and I can prove it with the witnesses that were with me there. Then a month after, about the incident of the Navy boat, yung kinuha nila, yung debris from the Chinese rocket that fell, sabi nila it was a mutual understanding where they gladly gave us the debris to take back to China. And lumabas yung video, sinisigawan, naubusan nga ng English yung ating Navy frogman.
Well, Mr.
Galit na
President.
galit siya. Ang ginagawa nyo, what are you doing? Tapos, we have it here, it was shown in video here. So these are the things that does not happen with Vietnam nor does it happen with Malaysia because we have a mutual respect for one another.
Mr. President, that is
So,
my point
President,
precisely.
My
Mr.
point is,
my-
it's very hard to talk
No,
to
my
another
point
party.
precisely, Mr. President.
Mr. President.
Malaysia and Vietnam. Let me address the Senate President because he addressed my comments.
Well, I'm trying
So-
to address the good gentleman's many points that are really...
Well, sorry,
President.
Senator Tiveros, I was just also addressing your points. Actually, hindi pa tapos ipakita yung pictures ng Malaysia. No? But yung point ni Senator, ni Senate President, Sir Senate President, as I said, I share with you the outrage. I share with you the frustration, ba't nangyayari to, ba't kinausap ng Presidente. But I also see the historical past ng panahon ni President Duterte, layer after layer ng communication hanggang maayos to prevent. I don't know if this chamber was informed. There was even a time for almost 2 months, may get 1 month. Hindi nagsasagutan ng telepono ang ating Coast Guard at China. Pero during the Duterte administration, pinagbawal ng both sides na hindi sagutin ng both sides yung telepono ng Coast Guard. Kasi sabi lang, di ba na mag-away yung gray ship, yung hindi pwede na yung Coast Guard na kung saan may emergency, hindi nag-uusap. So my point is, Mr. President, precisely why it's not happening between the Philippines and Malaysia at Vietnam, but it's also not happening between Vietnam and Malaysia and China is because they found a way to work it out without other superpowers and may malinaw na usapan. Is Vietnam and Malaysia satisfied? Of course not, because they believe it's theirs. Are we satisfied? No also. But I'm saying, Mr. President, in our desire to do something, we have to ask first, tama po ba nasa UNGA? Secondly, in our desire to do something against the biggest one, dahil mas malaki ekonomiya, mas marami sila, mas malakas ang kanilang navy, do we ignore our problems naman with Vietnam and Malaysia? And lastly, Mr. President, yes, mali kung nagsabi ang China na hiningi nila. But again, I mentioned this to the majority leader, under international law, kung meron kang something in space at mahulog, hindi pwede kunin ng ibang country yon. The only thing you can do is inform that country at sila kukuha. So kung may nahulog galing sa satellite ng China sa Pilipinas, ang obligasyon ng Pilipinas, tawagan ng China at kunin. Hindi rin pwedeng makipag-agawan ang tao natin. Baliktarin man natin ang sitwasyon. Sinabi ni Pangulong Marcos, may 2 tayong bagong satellite. Pag yan po nahulog, let's say in between the waters of Hong Kong and mainland, we cannot get it. The Chinese cannot get it. They're obligated to tell us. Ngayon, kung may miscommunication or they lied to us, I do not excuse that. No? I was a very tough negotiator. Grabe po ang mga sinabi ko behind closed doors because yun po ang instruction ni President Duterte. Remember, a diplomat cannot say anything of his personal opinion. Only that of the instructions of the chief diplomat. So that's what my point here today, Mr. President. The chief diplomat has not stated that he wants this taken up sa UN. And yes, we're not a rubber stamp. And yes, may sariling pag-iisip ang Senate. Pero ang konstitusyon mismo nagsasabi na dapat ang presidente ang may diskarte at jurisprudence ay nagpapatunay nun. Sabi po dito, Pimentel versus Executive Secretary, GR 158088, July 6, 2005. In our system of government, the President, being the head of state, is regarded as the sole organ and authority in external relation and is the country's sole representative with foreign nations. This would put the Senate and Executive in an awkward position and could cause embarrassment in the Senate if the President orders the DFA not to file the resolution. On the other hand, if it is going to file the resolution, why not hear this in committee, get the input of the National Task Force, get the input of 24 senators, and strengthen it? There's another question of, is it the General Assembly or is it the Security Council? Because in cases where peace is at stake, the Security Council has the authority. Or is it a case of implementation? So should we go back to the permanent court of arbitration? So that's my point, Mr. President. Even I'm not saying malito, but I'm not also saying tama. Bakit? Hindi ko po naririnig kung anong instructions ng Presidente sa DFA. Hindi ko pa po naririnig ang ambassador natin sa US. Ano yung sinasabi niyang bagong guarantee ni President Biden? Diyan po ba ay guarantee sa freedom of navigation lang or pwede na tayo mag-dig for oil? Pwede na tayo mag-drill? So this is such a complex. But I would agree with you, Mr. President. I see your passion. I talk to you in the back in your office and you are just, full of frustration na ang linaw naman na sa atin to. But as I'm saying, Mr. President, Malaysia has its frustrations, Vietnam has its frustrations, even China sometimes has its frustrations with other countries, with world powers, and even with dealing with us. For example, Mr. President, meron tayong meron tayong agreement, walang magtatayo. There was a time that some of our fishermen with some of our personnel tried to put nipa huts, sabi pahingahan lang daw. So syempre nag-react yung China. And magalit man yung iba, tama sila mag-react. Bakit? Pumirma po si Blas Ople dun sa ASEAN sa agreement na pagbakante yung mga island, mga features, wala muna magtatayo ng kahit ano. And President Duterte asked me, Alan, ba't tayo hindi pwede magtayo ng kubo? Para lang naman shelter ng fishermen yon. Sir President, I will give you 2 reasons bakit hindi pwede. Number 1, yung Declaration of Conduct. Number 2, yun ang ginawa ng Chinese Sabi nila kubo lang, then ngayon punong-puno na. So alam na nila yung style na yon, kaya worry sila pag yung iba. So do I condemn them for doing that? Yes. Dapat yan wala. Dapat walang nakatayo sa mga island na yan. Tayo lang po, sa lahat ng claimant, tayo lang po ang disente, so to speak. Bakit po? Basic lang ang binibigay natin sa ating mga militar na nandun. Hindi natin minimilitarize to the point na it becomes a threat to our neighbors. But as the pictures would show, the Malaysian pictures, the Vietnam, this is a threat to our national security. Meron na pong submarines ang Vietnam at Malaysia. Pag ang China po ay nag-retreat at umalis dun sa mga islands na hawak po nila, malaki po ang problema natin. Bakit? Ngayon po yung consensus madali kasi malaki yung China. So madaling sabihin po, bully sila. Pero po ang Malaysia is smaller than us. So if we have a dispute with Malaysia, what will the US say? And will we be the bully or will Malaysia be the bully? Ganon din sa Vietnam. So, Mr. President,
yes.
the point I want to make, no, and I can wrap up or we can continue, is that I really appeal to you, to the body. Let us fully take this up in the committee. Kung kailangan 2 linggo, araw-araw, lahat ng briefing, lahat ng, kung kailangan in your chamber, kausapin din natin yung Chinese ambassador. If we have to get think tanks from Southeast Asia, because it's just so important. And I guarantee you, no, if we simply pass this resolution, tapon lang natin sa UNGA, madi-disappoint tayo. Because history has proven what I'm saying, na the UNGA is for consensus. It is not for highly contentious issues like this.
Mr. President,
Just my last point, sir, my last point is, it's so important that if we don't get all the information, study it well, and maybe help the DFA craft the resolution itself, kung yun ang decision natin, baka maging negative pa sa atin to later on. So let me stop there and thank you for your patience, Senator Tiveros and Senate President. The general compulsory jurisdiction of ICJ, nag-withdraw ang US after that. And in fact, ang US, naghintay ng mas friendly na administration sa Nicaragua bago sila nagbayad. At walang nagawa ang GA to enforce, to make sure that US paid. In fact, some writers and some thinkers said, nag-weaken pa nga yung UN noon. Bakit? Kasi pag nagbotohan, so for example, we bring our resolution to the UN. The UN is strongest pag consensus. Ano po ang definition ng consensus sa UN? Ang definition po, walang nag-object ni isa. So sa UN po, pag nagbotohan at wala pong hindi po magbobotohan, sasabihin lang, it is the consensus of the UN, etc. That's the most powerful sa UN. Pag may isa, magbobotohan. So, if countries close to China vote against us, they will not implement this. It will make our PCA arbitration ruling even weaker.
No, Mr.
Kasi
President.
supposedly, that's the opinion of the good senator. And again, I bring you back to the administration of Duterte and Aquino. Because we'll go back to multilateral and bilateral. No? India and Pakistan have a dispute. One of them wants bilateral, the other one wants multilateral. Senator Aquino here and his father are very frequent sa IPU. Have you ever seen an American congressman or a congresswoman or senator there? No. Why? They do not attend these multilateral legislative bodies because they do not want to be bound by them. What I'm saying, Mr. President, is that we cannot say, don't worry, nandyan ang US, they will take care of us. Our relationship
I'm not
with
saying that,
US,
Mr. President.
well, many of the colleagues and allies of Senator Tiveros in the media, whether it was the former Secretary, Justice Carpio, you have given many of your opinion during the Duterte administration. It was all leading to that, no? And even in the CA, no? Even the assurances of our ambassador to US. Ang eto point ko, the US is a good friend. They're an indispensable ally. People to people sa ating security economy, we should get closer to them. But I
understand your position as a former secretary.
So we should strengthen the position of the country. And I disagree with the president on some issues. I might disagree with him on the China issue, how to deal with China. But I do believe he was the one elected, and we should at least hear out his people, the National Task Force on the West Philippine Sea and the DFA, so that we know where we're going, di ba?
So what we can do is have an early caucus on Monday to discuss this, and we take it up on plenary, we'll adopt it or amend it. But definitely one thing is for sure. We must condemn this blatant abuse of their bullying tactics against us. We cannot just let this.
Mr. President,
I think we're all agreeable to that.
if the resolution
And for the
simply
record,
states
Mr.
that, he can
President.
pass that right now.
President, good
So, Mr.
gentlemen.
President, may I just
I'm
clarify
just,
that one line lang, no?
I'm just following on the last
Word of the President that the very point of this resolution is to strengthen further the hand of the Philippines na lalo na ngang lumalakas sa panahon ngayon na dumadami yung mga bansa at dumadami yung mga regional formations who are supporting us in our victory at The Hague.
Mr. President, you can be sincere, but you can be sincerely wrong. So what I'm saying is that if the intention is to condemn and to make a stand, unanimous tayo. Pero pag nagsabi ka na ng strategy, dalhin natin sa UN, kailangan pag-usapan yan kasi may historical background at may mga ahensya at mga in charge na nandun.
Question, my dear colleague. Question: what harm will it take?
He could unravel all of the negotiations of a president because if the president agreed, I
But
do
the
not
president does not have to agree, Your Honor.
No,
Since the president will say we will study.
Well, then China, when we're talking, will say that the Senate wants something else. And so, meaning, Mr. President, if you're dealing with your child, and the child comes with you and sabihin, Daddy, sinabi ni Mami, okay na. And then goes to your Mami, Mami, sabi ni Daddy, okay na. So,
Mr.
of course,
President, would
I
you
didn't get
I'm
that-
sorry, it's
no, no.
not as simple as that.
No, it's as simple as that. You know, but Mr. President, I stood before these people, no? And,
No, but I know,
and
Mr.
China,
Yes.
seeing that united ang Congress at Presidente makes a big difference from seeing that one part of government wants multilateral, the other one wants bilateral, one wants to go to PCA, other. They understand our democracy. But when it's the institution itself that made a stand, ibang usapan na yon.
But Your
Mr.
Honor,
President.
but Your Honor, if I may just
Yes,
finish.
Mr. President.
The one thing I noticed with dealing with our friends in China is that they want to discuss it bilaterally because they want to keep it quiet. Once you take it out to the international community, ayaw po nila yan. Unfortunately, all our discussions bilaterally have not been successful.
That's not true, Mr. President.
Well, during your time, yes.
Judiciary, and
During
there
your
were,
time,
and I
yes.
will tell you the reasons why behind closed doors. Because there are reasons for that. So my point, Mr. President, once sinabi ni President Bongbong, hindi, dalhin natin sa UN, eto tayo, multilateral, then we're free to agree or disagree and ano. Pero yung uunahan natin siya na hindi pa niya alam. Of course, that's our privilege. But sometimes you withhold your privilege because it is better for those who are negotiating. For all I know, the Secretary of Foreign Affairs, because Secretary Manalo is an old hand, very much respected yan around the world, no? And he knows Minister Wang Yi. For all we know, they are renewing ties and they're bringing up certain issues. For all we know, I do not know. That's why I want to know. I want to hear the National Task Force, and I want what Senator Risa is pushing. Actually, they've been consistent. They pushed that during the Aquino administration. They pushed that during the Duterte administration. She might be right, she might be wrong. But it deserves a discussion. That's what I'm saying, Mr. President.
Ngayon, ikaw, bilang Pilipino, ano ang masasabi mo at reaksyon sa balitang ito? Mag-iwan ka ng komento sa ibaba at atin pong babasahin isa-isa.